All right, let's just jump right in. Have you ever really stopped to think about how a democracy is supposed to work? I mean, how do the opinions of millions, literally millions of people, get turned into a single law? It's a huge question, and today we're going to break down all the different ways societies have tried to answer it.
So think about it. This is really the core challenge for any democracy, whether it's huge or tiny. You've got an opinion, right? An idea about how things should be. But how does that thought in your head, actually make the journey all the way to the government and become a real policy? It feels like a massive jump, doesn't it? Well, the bridge for that gap is a word we throw around a lot: representation.
Okay, so what is political representation? Here's the thing. Representation sounds simple, but it's really not. It's not just one single idea. It's a whole bunch of different systems and theories, and each one comes with its own baggage, its own rules and consequences. So to really get a handle on this, let's start with a clear definition.
So, at its heart, representation is a mechanism. It's the process for how the beliefs and wishes of a whole population get translated into action by a much smaller group acting on their behalf. They're basically given the green light by the people, and their decisions affect everyone. But, and this is the big but, how they're supposed to act. That's where things get really interesting, and where all the arguments start. And this really gets to the core tension of the whole thing. Is a representative supposed to be like a lawyer, a trustee, someone you hire to use their expertise and judgment to get the best outcome for you? Or are they supposed to be more like a mirror, a delegate, who just reflects your exact wishes, no questions asked? It's a huge question, and the answer you pick pretty much determines what kind of system you're going to build.
So that brings us to our next section, people power versus politician power. This is maybe the most basic choice you can make. When it comes right down to it, who actually pulls the lever? Is it the people directly or the politicians they elect?
So you've got two main paths. On one side, you have direct democracy. You can picture ancient Athens, right? Citizens actually showing up in a public square to vote on laws themselves. Total people power. Then, on the other side, you have indirect democracy. This is what most big countries like the US, the UK, or India do today. We vote for representatives to handle the nitty-gritty of governing for us.
And of course, there are major pros and cons to both. Direct democracy, which you still see in places like Switzerland with all the referendums, gives you this incredible legitimacy. I mean, the people decided directly. But the big risk is what's called the tyranny of the majority, where the 51% can just vote to oppress the 49%. It can also be super slow. Now, indirect democracy is way more efficient. You have professionals doing the job. But the huge danger there? That those elected officials get totally disconnected from the voters.
All right, so let's say we go with indirect democracy. We're still not out of the woods, because now we have another problem to solve: making every vote count. You know that feeling, right? In a lot of systems, if your candidate loses, it feels like your vote just vanished. It didn't count for anything. Well, that problem has led to some really clever solutions. So what if we could design a system where the legislature was a perfect mirror of the popular vote? Just think about that for a second. If a party gets 30% of the votes nationwide, they get exactly 30% of the seats in parliament. A smaller party gets 5% of the vote, bam, they get 5% of the seats. That, right there, is the big idea behind a system called proportional representation. And the goal of proportional representation, or PR, is super clear. Get rid of those wasted votes. The whole point is to create a government that's a genuine reflection of what the voters actually want in all its diversity. It's a total shift from the winner-take-all mindset. Okay, but how does this actually work in practice? Well, one of the most common ways is called the single transferable vote. It sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. Instead of just picking one person, you rank the candidates: first choice, second choice, third, and so on. To get elected, a candidate needs to hit a certain number of votes, called a quota. Now, if your number one pick is super popular and gets way more votes than they need, their extra votes aren't wasted. They get passed down to your number two choice. And if your top pick gets knocked out for having the fewest votes, your vote just moves to your next preference. It's a system designed to make sure your voice is heard, one way or another.
Sounds great, right? But of course, there's a downside. Because PR is so good at representing everyone, you often end up with a parliament full of lots of small parties. And what does that mean? It can be incredibly hard to form a stable government. You get these shaky coalition governments that can fall apart at any moment. And historically, some people point to this system as a factor in the instability of places like pre-1958 France, or even worse, for allowing extremist parties to get a seat at the table in Germany's Weimar Republic. All right, let's switch gears and look at something completely different. A really radical idea. Forget about voting based on your zip code. What if you voted based on your job? What if your representative wasn't for your town but for your profession?
This idea is called functional representation. And the logic is pretty straightforward. Shouldn't the people making laws about farming be farmers? Shouldn't teachers have a direct say in education policy? The whole point is to get real, hands-on expertise into the halls of power, instead of just lawyers and career politicians.
And this isn't some abstract theory either. It's actually been tried in different forms. You had the Soviets of workers and farmers in post-World War I Russia. The Weimar Republic in Germany had an economic council. Even fascist Italy under Mussolini and Indonesia under Suharto used versions of this, creating assemblies with representatives from specific groups and professions.
But the massive risk here, the biggest criticism, is pretty obvious. You risk turning the legislature into a gladiator arena for special interests. If the farmer's representative is only fighting for farmers and the teacher's rep is only fighting for teachers, who's fighting for the country as a whole? It could basically tear the nation apart into competing tribes.
So, as we wrap things up here in our search for perfect representation, it becomes pretty clear, right? There's no magic bullet. There's no one-size-fits-all perfect system. Every single model we've looked at is a series of trade-offs, a choice between different sets of pros and cons. So let's just run through the big trade-offs one last time. You want maximum voter power? Direct democracy is your answer, but you sacrifice efficiency. You want a stable government? Standard winner-take-all systems are great for that, but you might shut out minority voices. You want maximum fairness? Proportional representation is the way to go, but you might end up with an unstable government. And really, what this all comes down to is this. The system a country picks isn't just a technical detail. It's a statement. It's a reflection of what that society truly values most. Is it direct control by the people? Is it rock-solid stability? Or is it making sure every single voice, no matter how small, gets a fair hearing? So I'll leave you with this to think about. If you were designing a system from scratch, what would you prioritize? Would you go for maximum fairness, rock-solid stability, or total direct control by the people? You can't have it all. There's no easy answer, which honestly is what makes this whole topic so endlessly fascinating.